Okay, well, I would like to call the June 14th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting to order. Could we please start with the roll call?
Sue Alberg. Scott Conlon. Jeff Ellenbogen.
Here.
Paige Lewis.
Here.
Nicholas Novello.
Here.
Dan Olson.
Here.
I have not received any notification from Council Liaison Aaron Rodriguez, but I see he's not here.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the agenda? Great, okay, then I just need a motion to approve.
I will motion to approve the agenda as written.
Thank you. Second? Jeff,
Sure, second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. The agenda is approved. Okay, and approval of previous month's minutes. Does anyone have any changes to the previous month's minutes?
I do have one addition, amendment, and that is that Kathy Cron was not actually at the meeting. I'm sorry about that. I put her as present when she is not.
She's always here in spirit.
It's true.
Okay, seeing no proposed changes, again, I just need a motion to approve.
I move we approve the minutes with that change to Kathy Cron's presence or not.
Thank you.
Second.
Any second? Thanks, Sue. All those in favor of approving the minutes? Great, thank you. The minutes are approved. Okay, still no public invited to be heard?
I have not received any notification. I don't believe Aurora has either.
No, Chair, no public invited to be heard as of yet.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and continue on to old business. Jeff, is that you?
Yeah. Yep. So at the last meeting, we had talked about tabling the field trip discussion until we knew more about what the guidelines would be. We believe that we can now transport people. Everyone in the vans at this point in time would have to wear a mask based on the transportation guidelines, but at least we can plan the trip and move forward with it if the board still wants to do that. So,
great.
Okay, so let's talk about a date first. And it appears that 3 of the board members are going to be out in July. And so would it be best to look at trying to do the field trip in August during our regular meeting, or what are the thoughts?
Makes sense to me.
Is everyone available for the August meeting?
What is the date? Do you happen to know?
Let's see. August 9th.
12th. Or hold it, sorry. 9th, yes, August 9th.
I will not be available, but that's all right. You know, I mean, you're never going to find everybody. So
I'm getting back into town that evening, so it depends if we're starting at our normal time. It should not be a problem. If it's earlier, I may not be able to make it. Would that be a normal kind of schedule or not? I mean, it's obviously going to be daylight. How does it usually work?
Well, we usually start a little bit earlier. Normally, we've tried to be on the road by 5:15 at the latest. So is the evening the best, or would it be better to try it on a Saturday morning or something?
I'm open to either. I just, that day, I may not be back by 5, and I'm fine with if I have to miss it, that's fine.
Do we want to try for later in that week? I mean, we could do it. Sue, are you out that whole week?
I'm coming back into town late on the 11th. So, or 12th, but you know, I'll be there. Yeah.
I can't do that weekend,
Oh.
sorry. If we're doing it later in the weekend, I can't do it.
Well, I was wondering about maybe the 12th or 13th.
12th is great.
What about staff? Would moving it to a different day that week work for you guys?
The 12th or 13th, is that what you said? Yeah, I don't know about a Friday night as far as if we're going to invite council, but I could make
Right.
any of the 11th or 12th or 13th work. David or
So
Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can make any of those times work. Actually, August works well for me. So July would have been a little more challenging, but whatever works for the majority, I can make work.
Same here. I can make those things work.
So what if we did that Thursday in the evening?
August
I
12th?
prefer not Thursday, but that's okay. Either way. I play golf on Thursdays.
Maybe you could make an exception, just this one.
Your game won't suffer, Dan, I promise.
It might get better. Who knows if I take a week off?
Are we talking about a 5
Okay.
p.m. start? Because I won't be able to make it before 5 that day. I just want to confirm.
I think that's what we're saying, yeah, 5.
Yeah.
So we're saying 5 p.m. on Thursday, August 12th.
Yep.
Can I get like a thumbs up?
Is that in
from
lieu of
everyone
Monday's
with that?
meeting then? You think that's in lieu of Monday's meeting or in addition to?
I was thinking in lieu of, but we would just, so we'd have to notice it probably some way,
Yeah.
but
Does that mean anybody who's
could
from
play
the
golf
public
on
can join
Monday.
us? Can people from the public choose to join then?
Yes, they would just need to provide their own transportation to the locations. And we could notify on primary stops that we'd make.
Cool.
So if that
So
is
does that-
the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Paige.
Oh, I was just asking if that, I'm just trying to look at all the little squares and make sure that looks like it'll work for everyone. I don't see anyone shaking their head.
I can't guarantee I'll be there, but you know, it's fine. I may not, you know, I'm coming from Durango, so I don't know. So, yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Well, let's go with that, if that works for staff.
Any clue whether city council likes Thursdays?
Have no idea.
Okay,
I will reach out to the clerk's office tomorrow and let them know and just see what feedback I get.
okay, good idea.
If you run into something that none of them will be available, then let us know. We can think about
Okay.
it. I mean,
Okay.
if we need to make an adjustment.
Okay. So then are we ready to talk about where we want to go?
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, Jeff, is that we don't need 2 months to plan the route.
No, we don't.
So we could certainly let the board think about it for the next month and talk about it in July, or solicit your top 5 locations via email or whatever, and then just try to distill some common threads. That might be the easiest way of doing that, but.
All
that's
right,
just a
let's do that
suggestion.
because we did get comments from all the board on their suggested location. So let's check with council and get their feedback, and then we could finalize this at the July meeting, the locations.
And I think Steve's presentation tonight may help inform some of
Yeah.
that.
I would agree.
Great. Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
I really appreciate you guys being willing to give some thought to what would be helpful for us to see, and also taking our feedback into account.
And Jeff, you'll reserve the van?
Yes.
Thank you.
Won't I, Aurora?
Yeah, that was a code, yes.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. All right, thanks.
Okay. Anything else under old business?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to new business. And the first item is the Adam Farm property acquisition. So Dan Wolford, I assume that's you.
That is. Thank you very much. Glad to be here, especially on this particular item. I think you've probably noticed that well over the last year, it seems it's been in the natural resources update, my update for the open space acquisition. In your packet is a map that reflects the location of this property. The Adam Farm property is located at 11684 Weld County Road 5.5. It's approximately 139 acres immediately. That would be west of St. Vrain State Park. It's very interesting in this negotiations. David and I have been involved in this particular negotiations for what appears to be over 2 years. It's certainly been a challenge where they had a real estate agent that really wasn't communicating, if you will, between the family and the city. And as a result of that and the frustration, the family's attorney jumped in and they pushed out, if you will, the real estate agent. And so we are now to the point where we are pretty darn close to having a signed purchase agreement with the family. So with that, there's about 6 shares of oligarchy with about 100, we're somewhere in about 130 acres for a total of $5.5 million. We worked very hard. We tried initially to start with a GOCO grant to get some support. And I think we would have been a lot more successful if state parks would have been willing to participate in this land acquisition. That's not the case. So it would be our hopes that very soon we'll get that signed contract from the family, and then we'll present that to city council. Again, the reason there's so much that needs to go on after council signs this, because this property in particular has been annexed into the town of Firestone. And one of the agreements, if you will, with that annexation into Firestone requested a first right of refusal. So now, once we get council to sign off on this, we'll turn this back over to the town of Firestone to see if they really want to spend $5.5 million to acquire the property. From just general discussions that we've had, David and I both, I can't imagine that the town is really looking to come up with $5.5 million for additional residential development. That was earlier, in the late 90s, was anticipated as a residential piece of property, especially when we are providing potential recreation opportunity with trail connections to the St. Vrain Greenway and a variety of other amenities that could be part of that. Included in this acquisition. Like I said, $5.5 million. Boulder County is participating in this with us. They are coming to the table with $2 million. So we're fortunate to be partnering with Boulder County on this. In turn, Boulder County will receive a conservation easement and hold a conservation easement on that. Additionally, we will be entering into a agricultural farmland lease with the family for 10 years. That's one of the stipulations. They believe that they would like to continue with ag operations for about another 10 years. So we'll see how that goes. The nice thing, it fits very well within the open space map is a community buffer. It certainly fits well from an agricultural preservation perspective. It allows us to preserve yet another, about 3/4 to a linear mile of the St. Vrain Creek. So with all of that, the only thing that's really kind of awkward, strange, that, part of the negotiations that we all have to do with is that the family is now asked to retain about a total of 11 acres and 4 development lots. So again, once we go back to the town of Firestone, since this is been annexed into Firestone, and they hopefully will tell us that they're not interested in the first right of refusal, then we have to go through their land use department and go through a subdivision exemption with them and break out these 4 lots, if you will. And those 4 lots are shown on the other map that's in your packet. So those are the lots that the family will then retain for whatever purposes they feel they need. And we've said, from that perspective, they have 4 lots. They can configure them however they want. We will retain a conservation easement on all of these lots. Each lot will be limited to a single residential development, not to exceed 15,000 square feet. So if you consider, these lots almost 3 acres, that would be a house, maybe some outbuildings, but not to exceed that. So with this, we're finally coming to a conclusion. I think we're excited about it. The family's excited about it. I hope you are too. So I will open this up for discussion and really look for a recommendation to go to council. It would be our hope that we would have a signed contract by the family, hopefully by the end of the month. We'll see how that goes.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, looking at the map, it definitely looks like an important puzzle piece in the sort of larger protection ring up there. Yeah, Dan Olson.
Remind me, Dan, where does the trail connector to St. Vrain Park? Is that on the northwest side of the St. Vrain in this area, or on the southeast side of the St. Vrain?
Board, here's where we're thinking. Again, it's all conceptual at this point in time. We've got the St. Vrain corridor that goes under State Highway 119 that makes it into the park. What we would anticipate that we would have an east-west corridor, trail corridor from Union Reservoir that would go through the Herner open space, through the Newbie open space, which is immediately to the north of the Adam Dairy Farm.
Those are those 2.5 squares that I see on your map?
Yeah, exactly. So it's more of an east-west connection from Union Reservoir along 26 or some way, along that corridor that would then tie in through the Adams farm property into St. Vrain State Park. So there would actually be probably 2 connections into the state park, one being St. Vrain Greenway, this other one being an east-west connection. Again, anticipating that we will be building over the next few years that loop trail around Union Reservoir.
Thanks. One more question quick. The 2 residential areas immediately west and southwest of the Adam Farm property, those 2 squares, are they in Longmont, Firestone, Weld County, are they incorporated?
Those are in, both of those are in Firestone. Yes. So the little notch, if you will, in the Adam Farm property, we will be adjusting that and incorporating that 11 acres in their square and making some lot line adjustments associated with the subdivision exemption through the Firestone process. And again, ideally, if you look at that, it's probably 35 acres just south and east of the Adam Dairy Farm. We'd really love to approach that landowner and acquire a conservation easement. We know that he's interested in, building a couple residential units on there. It would be great if we could preserve the balance of that corridor, and then, limit development 200 feet from the center line or something of that nature. That would be, another goal that we would love to do.
David, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to Dan's question about where that trail comes in. One of the things I think is a great opportunity is that this trail, well, the one from, like Dan mentioned, from the south on St. Vrain Greenway, tying into the state park and then heading out to the east too, that very naturally ties into that regional trail system. Then that, Longmont has really done I think one of the best jobs of making all the pieces there. Those out and backs would be nice, but what really does for Longmont residents is gives, I think, a great potential loop opportunity to come in on the St. Vrain, come up through the state park, head back around through that Union piece that Dan talked about through Newbie and stuff. So I think it just provides a lot of great opportunities. And Dan mentioned that protection of St. Vrain Creek. If you start looking at maps with the protection there, the protection of the state parks, the protection of Boulder County and the Lions, we have significantly those agencies protected the majority of the St. Vrain Creek from I-25 up to Lions. So it's pretty impressive what this acquisition does. So I also just want to thank Dan because he mentioned us working on this for 2 years. This is the second time Dan has worked on this project too. So he's got a lot more time in this than the 2 years that he and I have put in. So.
Well, the other nice thing about from a trail connection too, it certainly will provide a regional trail connection over to Meade High School, which provides, again, another safe option. I'm not familiar how familiar you are with Weld County Road 26 as it ties into County Road 7, but it's kind of crazy out there right now. And if we could provide an off-road opportunity for whether it's any kind of pedestrian traffic, we certainly know that David, and you can vouch to this, is some of the cross-country events or track events that go on. This provides yet another pretty nice connection to the high school out there.
Great. Nicholas, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Paige. So Dan, you mentioned that the property will be used for agricultural purposes for a period of 10 years.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the, we're talking a lot about, trail systems and regional trail systems connecting and conservation easements. How do those two things interact if it's being used for agricultural purposes?
Yeah, probably some perfect examples of how agricultural and the recreational trails and the interaction there would be on Golden Farms property, where the St. Vrain Creek and the Golden Farms and the Greenway are immediately adjacent to each other. In that particular location, there's a fence separator between those two, and we've not had any difficulty or problems there. Another good example would be the most recent opening of Spring Gulch 2 trail connection out at Union Reservoir that runs basically from Ute Creek Golf Course with the final destination being Sandstone. At this point in time, there's not a fence that separates the agricultural fields from, the Greenway Trail. We're going to see how that works. Generally speaking, there's corn and winter wheat being planted out there, but we've not seen and don't anticipate a whole lot of problems. So this is, again, would be another opportunity where it would be located on the outskirts of the agricultural property so that we're not fragmenting the agricultural operation or creating a problem for the agricultural tenant that has to open and close gates or any of that kind of stuff. So that is what we would anticipate in the future.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So just to make sure I understand that, this agreement does not include any descriptions about fence line where that would be drawn on the map. The assumption is that the border or the perimeter of the property will be used as that trail connecting system if we decide to
Generally speaking, that's
build that.
correct.
Okay, as long as it doesn't divide the agricultural property. Okay. Thank you.
David, you're muted.
Yeah, and I appreciate Dan, you giving those examples. And again, I think Dan mentioned his setup to this, that one of the reasons is besides the buffer, the trail connections, the riparian really was the protection of agriculture. So we're always trying to make those balances to provide those recreational opportunities plus the agricultural piece. And Dan, I think we have some great examples here in Longmont, but City of Boulder, and, trails and agricultural properties are very common. Boulder County has them as well. So it's always just trying to strike that balance. We can do as we said, is preserve agriculture in the way that's most economically feasible to the family, but also balance those other needs as well. So I think we can get there.
Dan, do the mineral rights come with this purchase? Or are they separate?
Thank you. Great question, Paige. Those mineral rights have been removed from the property, separated from the property. Currently, there's probably 6 wells on the property. Let's see if I could, probably just below the Ian property there's 6 wells. One's already been plugged in and abandoned. The balance of those are scheduled to be plugged in and abandoned. So we're anticipating that. But those mineral rights have been separated from the property.
Any other questions? So, oh yeah, Dan.
So Dan, what is it you would like from us?
I'm looking for a recommendation that we can include to City Council for the acquisition of this property.
Great. So if someone, I think that would be great. Sounds like a really important addition. So if someone would like to move that we recommend approval of this acquisition. Jeff?
I we recommend to follow Dan's proposal and recommend that moves forward to the City Council. Sorry for babbling that one.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Sue. All those in favor? Unanimously approved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for your hard work. Okay, the next topic is comprehensive trail system, which I believe is Steve.
Yeah, thanks. I was hoping Dan was going to drone on and on for a while because this one's going to be a little lengthy. I put together this presentation. I've done this presentation to PRAB probably 4 or 5 times over the past 20 years. It's really hard. I have mapped 37 different missing trail segments within the city. And I know of 3 or 4 more that I haven't yet gotten around to mapping. I was not going to give you because each trail segment gets about 3 slides. So I wasn't going to give you a PowerPoint with 130 slides to it. I wouldn't do that to anybody. So I put together a slideshow, which Aurora is going to bring up for me. I believe, Aurora, is that correct? There we go. So again, if I'm going too quickly, if I am droning on, please give me feedback. That will really help me. It's complicated. So we have 2 different capital projects that deal with missing trail connectivity within the city. PRO 83, which is the missing primary and secondary greenway connections. And that deals with the off-street trail connections, essentially. And then the T105 project, which is, and it's now called TRP. Sorry, this is an old slide. It's PRO 083 and TRP 105. TRP 105 is missing sidewalk connections. So those are sidewalks within the street rights of way. And if you think about our trail system, we utilize both of those networks to move people successfully throughout the city. So this is really the definition of the two projects, as I mentioned. Design and construct gaps in the primary greenway and secondary greenway trail system, and then gaps in the city sidewalk system. So what I've done is I've put together a sort of a list showing you what some projects that we've completed over the past decade. These projects, hold on, Aurora. I know I want to go fast, but not quite that fast. These projects are often taken, they often take part in conjunction with other types of projects, such as Kathy Crone's efforts with the park rehabilitation program. There's sometimes opportunities to fill in some gaps within parks with those projects. The engineering staff runs the T105 project, and we meet several times a year to talk about different areas where we're trying to complete gaps. They have staff over there that are looking for CDOT grants. And so sometimes they'll sweeten the pot for CDOT by saying, hey, we'll make this off-street trail connection. And so we'll get some CDOT money from for a project that we weren't really anticipating, but it made it a better project for CDOT to fund overall the street improvements as well as the trail improvements. So it really comes at you in a lot of different directions. And so I'm happy to clarify that for anybody. But go ahead, Aurora. Thank you. So this is a project. The next one is a project that was completed right around the flood, because I remember I was working out when the flood hit. But this is Rough and Ready, the Rough and Ready Greenway, just south of Mountain View and just west of Pace Street. We made a connection between the existing Rough and Ready trail along the Rough and Ready ditch to a public trail that spans between Ponderosa Circle and Independence Drive. And so that was a successful project that helps link this area where the Rough and Ready label is right now is actually now affordable housing. So I'm looking to build a bridge over the ditch to connect that affordable housing to this trail in order to better safely connect students who live in that neighborhood, the affordable housing neighborhood, to the schools to the west. Next slide. This was one where we built a trail from 15th Avenue down to Spangler Park. You can see there's a couple dashed lines. The dashed line to the northwest is a trail that's not even Spangler Elementary School anymore. It's now a Catholic elementary school, not elementary school, but elementary and middle school, I believe. But we want to make a trail connection up to the school. Kathy Crone right now is looking to bid and install a new bridge over the Spring Gulch that runs through Spangler Park. And the developer who is developing that property just to the east of that pond will be building a trail connection, not in that location, but they will be making a trail connection up to Baker Street, which will help make a better connection to Longmont Athletic Center there to the east. That should happen starting this year. Next. This is up in sort of north central Longmont, 19th Avenue. Gay Street is just off the screen to the west. This is Northridge Elementary. Like I said, we built a trail that connects between Bragg, Tony, and Herman Places down to 19th Avenue, which provides a safer route for kids to walk to school in that general area. Next. This is a trail that's just east of the park maintenance facility. It's north of the railroad tracks, and it's a connection from Sunset Street over to First Avenue. The connection to Vivian Street was made with this project, and this is actually currently being used as the RSVP St. Vrain Greenway detour while we're building the RSVP project behind Left Hand Brewery. It'll remain in place for a couple of years while we're replacing the Boston Avenue road bridge. So it's proven to be a pretty important connection to route people around the St. Vrain Greenway while it's not available.
Yeah, I've been on it 2 or 3 times already. It's working great, Steve.
Good to hear. Thanks, Dan. The little red line connection there up to the Bond Farm neighborhood, that's the Bond Farm neighborhood where we're going to be building a future small neighborhood park. That was, City Council decided that we don't need that trail connection, so they let the applicant out of building that trail connection. So that won't be going in at this point in time. Next slide. This is a project that we built with the T105 project. It's a sidewalk on the eastern side of South Sherman Street. And what this really did was help connect the mental health facility there up to the existing bus stops and things up by Ken Pratt Boulevard. So this was a successful project that was completed, about 9-10 years ago. Next. This was a section that was missing, and I think a lot of people forgot that it was even missing, but when it was built, it was a big deal. This is on the south side of 9th Avenue between Martin Street and Lashley Street over on the east side of town. I recall a number of times seeing people in wheelchairs and walkers and things walking in the travel lanes of 9th Avenue because there was no sidewalk on the south side. So this was a great project that we completed a number of years ago. That was really part of the overall way to move people around the city outside of vehicles. Next. We did a conceptual design at City Council's request to see how we can best get people over the railroad tracks at this. This is north of 9th Avenue along Spring Gulch. That's Concepts Direct in the bowling alley, really right. Well, it's really the bowling alley right in the center of your screen at the bottom. Right now, there's a trail along the northeast side of Spring Gulch that connects back in between Placer Avenue and Snowmass Avenue, but it does not connect over the tracks. There has been a social trail across those tracks for years. That's obviously alarming and dangerous. And the concerns are, as we're moving forward with our quiet zones efforts throughout the city, that the railroad may require us to fence this off so people cannot physically get across the tracks to keep them even safer. So we did a conceptual design of an underpass there, and I'll refer to it later, that it is not cost effective as I imagined. Next slide. And then we also did a conceptual design so far of the Oligarchy Ditch Trail, basically from the intersection of 21st Avenue and Main Street all the way down to Mountain View Avenue, using a series of alleys, streets, and going through Lanyon Park. So we've done conceptual design to that. So now I'm going to talk about some projects that we've, next slide, Aurora. Oh, I'm sorry, a couple more I added in here. This is the 9th Avenue and Hover Street improvements that we have done. We've done a conceptual design for all of this. We were actually able to build from 3rd Avenue Place right there by Golden Ponds up to Allen Drive, and built a sidewalk on the south side of 9th Avenue over to the Valley subdivision. This was an area that was cut off pretty significantly during the flood, and the residents of the Valley subdivision there, just north of the Golden Ponds label, really reached out to the city and said, hey, you know, we're out here on an island. We have no way to really safely walk anywhere. And so we responded to those residents' concerns. We're able to build a couple of good trail segments. The rest of this will happen probably mostly through development, but there might be some capital improvements associated with making these trail connections, basically from the Home Depot all the way up to 9th Avenue on the west side of the road.
On the west side, nice, because
Yes.
the east side's great, but it's a pain to get across.
It's a pain to get across. And how many times have you pulled out to make a turn in a vehicle and not notice someone riding the wrong way in the sidewalk because there's only a sidewalk on one
Right,
side of the street?
right.
It's not the most, especially with the volume that street sees, it is not the safest way to do multimodal transportation through there. We should have sidewalks on both sides, or side paths on both sides. especially if we don't have bike lanes, which Hover doesn't have
Yeah,
the width. for
Hover's
bike
no
lanes at this
way,
point in
right?
time.
You don't want to be on that street on a bike.
Yeah. There's some challenging sections, but it's really something that we need to be looking at. Actually, at the very southwest corner of 9th and Hover, that development has occurred since this slide was made. And so part of that has been built already, but there are still gaps. Next slide. Okay, so here's where we are. Other projects that didn't have a slide, but that we've talked about have been St. Vrain Greenway improvements, the Spring Gulch 2 improvements that Dan alluded to, from Stephen Day Park down to Union Reservoir, and the funding in 2023, hopefully, if council approves the proposed capital budget, is to make that connection start in 22, 23, from Union Reservoir down to Sandstone Ranch. So there are a lot of efforts based on trail design, but we certainly are challenged with all the other capital project needs that we have, as well as funding availability. So I'm just highlighting some of the unfunded projects we have,
Sorry, Steve,
but are on our radar. Go ahead, Dan.
What do I see that's highlighted? I see a whole lot of red fin stuff. Is it the purple and yellow and green that I'm looking at here?
Don't look too hard. It's a map. Some of this is on our GIS layer, and so those red thin lines are just main streets. The small purple ones are some old trail segments. So this graphic was really just meant as this is the city. We've got a lot of trails. Some included, some not. Next slide, Aurora, save me. So one of the big ones that we are looking to fund in the next few years is the Oligarchy Trail. If you remember, we've talked to you about the Enhanced Multi-Use Corridor project that council has adopted in the past. And 21st Avenue between Main Street and Hover is one of the main east-west EMUC corridors. And the Oligarchy ditch ties in at Main Street and 21st. And so we were looking right around when COVID hit at doing a conceptual design for an underpass at Main and 21st that would allow a trail to get underneath that state highway, as well as allowing the ditch to effectively flow under the state highway. There's some concerns with the flows of the ditch from the ditch company, which we are a majority shareholder. That project was delayed because of just different attention that we needed to pay on other things. So we haven't done that conceptual design yet, but I did do a conceptual design on the Oligarchy Ditch Trail. And this is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this area of town, but the Eagle Eye Care Center is just north of Tire Plus. Tire Plus is mentioned or labeled there. And so there's an existing, we have a short stretch of existing trail behind Tire Plus, but it dead ends into nothing. And so right now people are walking in a muddy, undeveloped area. And then the yellow you see there is an existing alley that we want to transition into a combination alley and vehicle access point for just those homeowners. There won't be any other need for a vehicle to go down there except when you live in those homes, but we don't want to cut those folks access off to the back of their lots. So we've done some public efforts to reach out to them, and we'll be doing a design in such a way that will allow you using pavement markings and different types of pavement to make it as clear as we possibly can that people and vehicles should expect pedestrians and cyclists through this area here. And at the eastern end of this corridor is Collier Street, and that's Lanyon Park. Next slide. There's just some, you get an idea. That's the Tires Plus in the left picture in the distance coming from the alley. So it's just sort of a dirt area along the ditch. And it's just not a whole lot of developed area, though people are using it and using it regularly. There was actually just east of the Tires Plus in that gap there was an affordable over the past couple of years that will definitely benefit from the development of this trail system in the future. Next slide. As I mentioned, it's a greenway and it's got a dirt trail and an alley. We've done the conceptual design. We have the land, roughly $232,000. Next slide. And then this is the trail idea going through Lanyon Park, so continuing that alley that I showed you in the last project is up in the sort of top left corner of this where that orange car is. And then people would be coming through the park and then behind the ball fields connecting into 19th Avenue. Next slide. The Lanyon Park master plan update does show us naturalizing the ditch between the baseball outfield and the ditch to make it more of a native area. It's sort of an unused turf area right now. So in order to save water, we are looking to, so this project would probably incorporate that transition of the park into its design and construction. Next slide. Again, we can fit the trail between the ball fields and the ditch. The ped bridge that's over there, it was replaced in 2011, so it's relatively new. And so the estimated cost is about $135,000. Next. Continuing down the oligarchy ditch, this is between 19th and 17th. There's an existing alley that's really, really tight and is used by Longmont sanitation, but I've never seen another vehicle on it besides our trash trucks. It's really tight and it's really just for ditch maintenance. So we would utilize that right of way to repurpose that into a trail that people can safely use. Next one. So there might be some power poles in the way. We need to build some intersection improvements at 19th and at 17th. 17th would be expensive because 17th Avenue, where this ditch and trail would tie in, the safest crossing would be right there at the railroad tracks, which is where we're going to have a quiet zone project. So we would have to coordinate with our quiet zone project as we move our way up through that corridor of town with the quiet zones that we've been getting federal money for our quiet zones. And so we would need to incorporate at least the design of, even if we don't have the trail built, the design of a pedestrian crossing through there that would work with the trail. And so with all those improvements, we're looking at about $450,000. Next. I skipped from 17th to 15th because at 17th, you could sort of see the, there is not any land along the ditch for us to put a trail. It pretty much runs through all private backyards. So what the idea is, the conceptual design shows is Lamplighter Drive through that corridor is to add sharrows, change some of the parking patterns, widen the sidewalk, make things safer for pedestrians to use as a regional trail corridor, but it would be on the street. It wouldn't be along the ditch. South of 15th, we have the opportunity to duck back in and be along the ditch behind these homes. And so that's what this project shows. 15th doesn't have the volume of 17th, so there wouldn't be any intersection improvements there except for stop signs. And then we actually have, well, the ditch company has this right of way. We might have to relook at the legal language in the ditch easement to know whether we can put a trail here or whether we have to change that easement, but we do have ownership of the property in an outlot. So this looks like it's something that we can definitely do. Next slide. And you can see that there's just a little bit of land there behind the homes, but that would be safer than people traveling on the street. Next. And this one costs about $245,000. There is an existing capital project that occasionally gets funded for that's improvements to the oligarchy ditch. You know, the city being the primary ditch company shareholder, we have an interest in trying to make the ditch as functional as possible and as maintainable as possible. There are definitely, through this whole corridor, there are some challenges with our ditch maintenance. So I would be working with, in the final design, I'd be working extensively with our operations folks and seeing if they wanted to put some money towards some ditch improvements that would make their maintenance of this ditch, would improve that. And also the ditch company, but typically the city is the one who ends up funding those type improvements. Next slide. And this is the same study. Mountain View Avenue right there is just on the north side of that of this slide is Spangler Park. And so that's where we're trying to get people down safely to 9th Avenue. This is just, again, I referred to the bowling alley, which is sort of in the south, I'm sorry, the very, very bottom, a little bit to the right of your screen. We can't get a crossing over the railroad tracks or under the railroad tracks. It would be a multi-million-dollar project to be acquiring land and working with the railroad. So what we've come up with is people coming out of Kensington Park from the south would have to use the 9th Avenue right of way to get over to a different trail that would more effectively get them up to 12th and Mountain View and Spangler Park to the north. What this does is this design allows the Quiet Zone project to fence off whatever it feels it needs to fence off without adversely impacting pedestrian connectivity, safe or unsafe, sanctioned or unsanctioned. So that's what the idea behind this design is. The gap is there's an existing trail there right behind the old community gardens. Next one. Those are just some pictures of that corridor. You can see there's ample space to slide a trail in there between the ditch and the gardens. Next. Same thing between 11th and 9th. We can come in behind Concepts Direct, which is that, not Concepts Direct, I'm sorry. Circle Graphics, which is a business there just west of the bowling alley, and fit a trail in there. Next. And again, this trail is definitely desired by the public. The Kitely neighborhood is that neighborhood, and they are a vocal local neighborhood, and they like to use our trail systems. And so we want to respond to their requests. Because of previous council agreements, we would have to be on street between 12th and Mountain View. We couldn't follow the ditch through that neighborhood, but I think we can do that through some signage and some sharrows. Looking at about $440,000 to complete this section of trails. Next. This is in northwest Longmont. You can see Dawson Park there. I'm sure the board is very familiar with Dawson Park these days with all the stress on Lake McIntosh. This is an existing utility easement between these homes. It's really just privacy fenced on both sides, and it's just sort of a corridor. It seems like a pretty easy place to put a trail, and would help get people to closer to, a more streamlined route to 17th. Now, when this was originally considered, the stoplight at Harvard and 17th didn't exist. Now that there's a stoplight there, that is the preferred crossing. This may be a less attractive trail to try to fund because, we want people to cross at the stoplight because that's the safest place to cross. And so by putting this trail in, we might be guiding away from that. So we'd have to look at that before we would invest in pursuing this trail line. Next. Those are just some photos. Like I said, privacy fence on both sides, pretty wide, pretty flat, pretty easy. Next. We'd have to work with PRPA or the Power Authority to get an easement through there. And it's about $55,000. Next. This is one that I've talked to you about before and has been in your packet. This is the Dry Creek Trail between Village at the Peaks and Sunset Street. The red is adjacent to Village at the Peaks, and the city paid for them to build this trail as part of their overall development. The blue is a trail that we have a CDOT grant for design. And so we are working on design of that trail right now. And that trail would connect ultimately all the way over to Sunset Street. It's showing a little bit short in this graphic, but it would connect to Sunset Street. Next slide. The nice thing is that there's a Longmont Housing Authority affordable housing development being proposed just south of this new section of trail. We would need an easement from them, but they are aware of the city's desires, and they have they have a desire to tie into the trail and be able to move people, their residents, back and forth east-west. Dry Creek's a really interesting trail because there is a nonstop trail with only one at-grade road crossing from North 75th all the way to Sunset Street once this trail is done. So that's a pretty nice long trail section for people to move in and out this part of town. Estimated cost is about $300,000. Next. And then just a couple sidewalk projects that are more in the transportation or engineering staff realm. And but I still keep my finger in that area just to keep track of what those guys are doing. Next slide. This is between Flower Bin and the western access to those of you that cut through the old Walmart site to get to Village at the Peaks. I'm trying to think, there's a new restaurant, new Mexican restaurant over there, but there's no sidewalk on the south side. You can see the social trail. I've seen people walking in the mud, especially when there's snow and sleet and runoff. So this is one that we do need a couple easements from these property owners. We don't have the right of way through there. I know this is on engineering's radar to try to fill in, but we have not yet accomplished that. Next. Yeah, like I said, social trail, it can get muddy. It's needed. Next. Dangerous, improved connection to the shopping areas of Hoover and Nelson, need some right of way, about $35,000. Was that it? Okay, great. So that being said, yeah, I'm sure there's questions, and I have a pretty good understanding of the trail system and the sidewalk system through the city. I've worked on building a lot of it with other folks and have just been around here for a long time. It's hard to capture everything. So I'm happy to take this conversation wherever you'd like to go. Feel free. Jeff, it looks like you're the first one.
Is that okay, Paige?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I guess my question, and if you said this already, I apologize, but like the last thing you just showed feels like it has literally nothing to do with parks or recreation. It feels like it should be a city roadway thing. Like that's not near anything that we're in charge of, right? I don't understand how that applies.
Well, it does in that natural resources staff, we're not just looking at trails that are off street. We are looking at safe ways to move people around the city to be able to get to and from our recreational facilities and other facilities within the city. So we work with our multimodal transportation planning staff. We work closely with our engineering staff. Like I wouldn't be managing that project, that sidewalk.
Okay.
But I would support and help our staff in trying to get that funded and approved, and we would have an engineer managing that.
And your reason for being interested, you just explained. You're saying you're not just focused. You're not in charge of every sidewalk in Longmont, is what you're saying. But if
I'm just one guy.
It connects things together, that's something you care about.
Yes, the network, and like I said, there were 37 different projects I could have put in there. I think I fit like 15. So we can go on till we got till 9, right, Paige? So we can go on. We got more time. I got lots more
slides. That we do
slides.
not go on to 9.
You, Steve, we have until 7:33.
Okay,
I'm not asking
fair.
any more questions. That's all I
That's
wanted
fair.
to know.
But yeah, so that's the mindset of the staff that work together on these things is how do we prioritize limited dollars and limited staff to try to maximize the benefit of how we make connections. And the Dry Creek Trail behind the Longmont Housing Authority one is an example of what I was talking about. That was thrown into a CDOT grant to improve the intersection of Sunset and Ken Pratt Boulevard. We got a grant, but that made the grant all the more attractive to CDOT to fund because there was a trail component to it. And so we're like, okay, yeah, we'll throw that in. Sure, that's great. Let's do that now. And so the opportunity arose. So now we're designing it and we're going to build it. It's hard to prioritize what's the best one because each person in the city, depending on where they live and where they work, where they recreate, where they go, finds one more important than the other. So, and actually, before you move on to the next question, one thing that I didn't mention is that the other challenge of this is that the PRO 83 project is also to replace existing trails that are in place but are deteriorating, that have been around for a long time. There's one south of Skyline High School that's an embarrassment that our triathlon uses every year that is asphalt and falling apart. And we have to hit that in the next 3-4 years and replace that. And so that dollar-wise and staff time-wise puts some of these projects back later because we're focusing on the replacement of those things. And replacement is never easy because trails built 25 years ago don't necessarily follow the same federal and local requirements that we have now. And so it just becomes more complicated. So Paige, I'll defer to you.
Any other questions? Nicholas?
Thanks, Paige. I think it's partially a question, partially a comment. So I definitely understand the challenge of 15 different, we've only seen 15 of more, 37 that you mentioned, right? certainly difficult to grapple, get our hands around how to prioritize which projects should we move forward. We did talk about at least one project that I feel like, you even said it didn't make sense to move forward with, the Dawson Park, Harvard Street one. So, are there more like that, some projects that we can cut off that we know that we can remove from the list to help making the prioritization easier? Because sometimes it's hard to pick which one are the tops, but at least we can pick which ones should fall off the list, if that follow my logic.
Yeah, if any, there's one more. Maybe some of these things get filled in by the development as we're tracking them over time, but very few.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, are there ways to make this very complex problem that we have in prioritizing which ones should move forward and which ones we should not a little bit easier to wrap our heads around? And if there's one or two that we can remove from the list, then that seems like a win in my opinion. So.
I will go into the slideshow and in my files and mark that one as not necessary, but no, I haven't found one. And like I was saying before, it's just a matter of to prioritize. Everyone wants the one in front of their house. And it's hard to say which one's the most important. There's some that affect more. We're trying to focus on affordable housing development in the city. That's a conscious decision. And so I think some of the trails that we're looking at that do have connectivity to affordable housing complexes are good things, but that doesn't mean that other people don't have trail needs. So yes, yeah, we've tried to come up with 2 or 3 different prioritization ratings for the different segments, and we've landed on nothing.
I was just going to ask that if you had some kind of checklist or anything.
We've landed on nothing. We've looked at national standards. We've looked at, we've had a consultant give us some input when we were doing the enhanced multi-use corridor project, because this is just, it's been weighing on me. Like, I'd like to know which ones are most important. And I don't want to be the one that says just because I feel that way. That's sort of crummy. So I really would like to, and I've had public outreach. This project currently for 2022 does not have any funding. But we're looking at funding for 23 and beyond. We're trying to catch up as staff a little bit. So we're not proposing any funding for PR 83 in 2022. But that doesn't mean we can't be looking at trying to get with the public to prioritize, but it all depends on who shows up at the meeting. So.
Scott?
Yeah, and that lies the problem. I think the people who show up at meetings are the ones that are well served already. So I love the the oligarchy part of it, especially with the city's ownership of the kind of the right of way and of the ditch itself. But it serves people who are not going to be going to city council meetings, and so just as a general observation, I'm gonna guess they don't go to city council meetings. So and that's why I think that's where we need to look at prioritizing parts of the city that we don't address on a regular basis. Otherwise, my question is one, on transportation side, we constantly run into issues that it's a county little section, right? 17th, Boston, Sunset, perennially problem areas that the county doesn't fund for decades at a time. Does that exist somewhere, say like 22nd or something, in the city for trails? Is there equivalent on that on the trail side?
There's challenges, but we do talk with the county staff, Christine Oberdorf and Tim Swope and those folks over the county that deal in their trails. And, we just filled in a gap on the west side of South Sunset Street, just north of Boston Avenue, just south of our shop, just north of the convenience store there. There was a 30-foot section of the sidewalk that was never there. And I told our engineers, we're using this as a detour for the St. Frank Greenway for 2 years. Put a damn trail in and just put it in. And so they were able to figure that out and got it in. So yeah, there are things that Boston Avenue is a great example between Sunset Street and the river, where that's still county owned road. And they had a project and then their funding dried up and they didn't do the project. There's no sidewalks on either side of the road there. The land is in the process of being annexed into the city. We are looking at some projects. And so it takes time, but we also, I think, have a strategy of letting development do its job. And as that land, as we move forward with RSVP, as that land annexes into the city, as that land develops, they'll be building the sidewalks for us. And that's what, council direction has sort of been all along, is to let the development pay their way and for us to focus on areas that we don't have development opportunities. So but yeah, there are a few challenges. Another one is we're annexing some land down on the east side of Airport Road, way south, down there where the Kanemoto Farms are. And so we're trying to figure out how that might affect the sidewalk, the 10-foot sidewalk on the east side of Airport Road, because we don't want that to be interrupted by development. So we're always looking at that as development comes in, but there's a few challenges out there, but not quite as much as the road system.
Can I ask another one?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
As a user, or in like looking at the user perspective, can we put signs up on some of the side paths? Like, so let's just take Hover, the west side of Hover, for instance. Well before the sidewalk ends at someone's house, like, it would be great to say cross here at 9th Avenue, rather than you're now stranded and you either frogger it across the street or you go back up and you try to cross at 9th. It would just be nice to say the trail closed, like, doesn't exist 100 feet down this path. And there's several other places where you let the person make that decision safely rather than just cut them off abruptly.
So you just hit Jeff's question, the nail right there on the head. That's traffic. That's not me. I am more than happy to take whatever areas, and I know where you're talking about, and I'm more than happy to take whatever areas and pass that on to our folks and see if they want to install some signage.
Right.
But that's not something that Natural Resources really manages, is the trails in those rights of way. I do make sure that we have trails at the end to make sure no one falls off into the abyss. But as far as the warning signs, that's not a bad idea, Scott, I would have to pass that on to other staff.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, it happens on trails too, where it goes from an ADA compliant paved surface to like a social trail. And so it'd be nice for somebody before they get to that end to know that it's going to end in 100 feet or whatever.
I'm more than happy to, send me some stuff over and I can look at that and I can help where I can.
Okay.
Happy to.
Thank you.
David, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say, Paige is probably going to hear a recurring theme here that she could chime in wherever she wants. But again, I think everyone's really fortunate that Steve, being a resident in Old Town area, and look at these smaller missing pieces, recognize how important that is to get kids to meet a lot of our equity pieces right now too. That I was really appreciative people mentioned that too. These are some of the people who don't always have time to show up at meetings and stuff, but to get them to meet that goal, the city goal of having parks and infrastructure and facilities and rec centers within 10 minutes walk from our community. So it is an important piece. Steve looking at those for all these years, but also knowing that he's the one doing Clover Basin, he's doing the Workman Park, he's still working on Dickens. And he also, the piece he didn't touch on tonight, there's also in that list that we want to prioritize. I think coming back to this group with, maybe staff takes a stab at it, but I think balancing with those longer range planning pieces too, because Steve did talk about how do we get to Clover Basin, how do we partner with the county to get out to Terry Reservoir, maybe up into Lyons, how do we talk about how we get from Union Reservoir over to the state park. So there's a lot of those longer term, long range, large trails too that have to tie into the work plan of our project managers right now. But Steve, I think these small pieces sometimes you look and say, well, why does that really matter to us? Because it does tie into that real goal of equity sometimes. And they're important pieces. I think there's sometimes people get really excited about those big, long extensions that I can get excited about too. But Steve does a great job of keeping us kind of focused on what we need to get people moving safely around town too.
And it comes back to sort of what Scott was just saying, is that it's a pain to run into a dead end. Like nobody, they don't do roads like
Scott,
that.
I will make sure that, we can pass that information. I think that's a great,
yeah,
that's definitely a great comment.
There's some exciting things on the horizon. There's some development applications coming in north of 66, west of Main Street. There's the Terry Lake Neighborhood Park parcel up there that we would be developing in the future. I've secured some easements up in that area to try to get connections up to Terry Lake. We've looked at the possibility of leasing the recreational rights of Terry Lake like we do at McIntosh and some other areas. Dan has done a great job of acquiring open space down around Clover Basin Reservoir. We've been talking with the county about connecting the Dry Creek Greenway that I mentioned that goes all the way from future Sunset Street all the way to 75th, underneath 75th, connecting into the county ASI open space property, and then hopefully connecting up to the Clover Basin Reservoir recreational area that we can get those rights. And so there's a lot of great things. It just takes a long time. And I'll be honest with you, we are still flood focused. I'm still flood focused. And so I'm looking forward to the day and I'm not flood focused anymore and the flood's behind me, but I'm not at all there yet.
Any other questions? Well, I think this does highlight, several of us, I think, responded in terms of this field trip, just wanting to get a better sense of, you know, kind of overall trail connectivity, I think, and how are those pieces fitting together? What's the bigger picture? You know, how are we adding some of these? And I think it's interesting looking through, if you looked at these projects through those filters of like equity, safety, and then sort of return on investment, you know, there might be a small piece that leverages a whole big piece of connectivity, and sort of interesting to think about it through those lenses.
Thank you. I seem to do this with PRAB every 3, 4, 5 years, and I can do it again at any point. Always reach out. Like I know where there's gaps. I know we have some strategies. We try to prioritize as best we can, but we're prioritizing against a lot of other projects that we're doing too. So thanks for your time. Oh,
just finish them all, and then we wouldn't have to have this conversation anymore. Come on, come on.
You know, if you weren't golfing every Thursday, maybe you could help.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go back to my recommendation for more project managers, but I'm not sure where that's going.
Thank you, Paige.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. That's super helpful. I don't know how you keep all those bits of information and connections in your brain. Anything else under new business?
No.
Okay, so we'll go next to discussing items from the packet updates. So this is, if any board members have any questions from the updates from both Parks, Open Space, and Recreation that are provided in the packet, now is the time to ask them. Scott?
I just had a question for Recreation at Union Res to see how the first, was it 2 months of the self-pay has gone? And if there are enforcement issues that people aren't paying, or people are being honest about paying for their permits.
I think we've only had them operational for a little over a week.
Oh,
And, yeah, so they were installed, then we had some issues with software and how it was going to communicate with the company. First week so far so good. I will make a note and be prepared to respond at our next meeting about that, have more detail after more time.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yeah, Nicholas.
Hi, thank you, Paige. So quick question about the Lou Miller Park renewal. So it looks like it's been in this status where there's no new updates and it's still kind of waiting for the design consultant to come back for a few meetings now. So I'm just kind of curious if something we should be concerned about, whether or not this is normal for something to sit in this status for such a long period of time, or thank you.
Yeah, I'll answer on behalf of Kathy because she's not well, she's here in spirit, but she's not here. she's run into several challenges on another project that she is managing active construction on. And so it's really been a city slowdown of that project. And so the consultant is acting fine. And so haven't been any real challenges. It's just a matter of trying to juggle all the different things she's juggling and finding the time to get comments back to them for them to finalize their plans. You'll see the same thing with the Workman and South Clover Basin project stuff. I had a meeting this morning with my workman and with the consultant for both of those projects, and we're still confident we're going to be moving dirt here by the end of the year on Workman, which is exciting. But it's been a long haul. We've been a little bit sporadic here, for lack of a better term.
Okay, thank you. Helpful.
Other questions? I have one question, and I hesitate to bring this up, and I'm really just looking for a short answer. I see prairie dog management come up, and
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
wondering if you can just tell me what the city's policy is right now on prairie dogs. And I mean, it looks like there's management ongoing at several parks and properties.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. We probably have almost 14 locations throughout the city that we're actively managing prairie dogs. That many of those include some of our facilities. Some include irrigated turf grass parks. One in particular that we spend quite a bit of time on is prairie dog management out at the airport. So what that includes is installation of barriers to keep them from moving, constant monitoring and mapping to see trends. The other component is an ongoing euthanasia, if you will, where the prairie dogs have moved into irrigated turf grass parks or places that we've already designated as no prairie dog areas. So we use our PERC systems, the pressurized emissions rodent control, which is a carbon monoxide to keep those dogs out of those particular areas. I think that pretty much wraps that up.
And are you also relocating some?
Excuse me?
Are you also relocating some? It looked
No.
like.
We are, Steve's got a park development that's going on. And this is out in the, Steve, is it right if I say Clover Basin area?
Yeah, no, it's South Clover Basin Neighborhood Park Site. These guys know about it. Clover
Okay.
Meadows is the park name.
We've got a volunteer who's doing a passive relocation at this point in time. She currently has a permit from Jefferson County to relocate dogs over there. Much of that is just timing and the ability of when that permit is being accepted. But that future park site is being totally trapped in elimination and relocated then to Jefferson County.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think that's a pretty good success for the city. We have had such a challenge, and Dan can expand on this a bunch. We have had a lot of challenges of trying to relocate prairie dogs outside the county because nobody will take them. And so the fact that this group of volunteers were able to pursue a permit to relocate prairie dogs off of a park site where they wouldn't have been welcome because it's going to be, a neighborhood park, I think is a good partnership for the city to have entered into. And so I'm very glad that has happened there.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from the packet? Any items from staff? Jeff.
So I have a couple of things. The first one is we can start meeting in person if the board is interested in that. We could do that starting in July. And one of the things that David, although Paige and I remembered and not David, sorry, David, is that we had talked about this tonight and that we could either meet at the Parks building inside or if people are more comfortable, we could meet outside, and they've done a nice job of setting up a space outside of the building where we could also meet. So just wanted feedback on that.
What do you all think about trying for an in-person meeting in July?
I think in-person meetings it's definitely time to start doing them. I think it would be good for all of us board members to actually get to know each other a little better too.
Yeah, I agree. Others?
I'm up for meeting in person, but would only want to be indoors if everyone was either wearing masks or we all acknowledge what our vaccination status is, which I'm not sure people unvaccinated, but I'm not sure if everyone wants to share that status. So
I will tell you all that we've got 4 tables out back. We've got a variety of teak chairs and cushions. We actually wheeled out a 70-inch TV tonight, anticipating that you might show up. So we're definitely ready if you want to meet outside. It's got a tarp and a canopy over, and it's, even though it is 95 degrees outside, it's very pleasant. Last Friday, we interviewed for the volunteer coordinator. We did all the interviews outside. It was a very pleasant outdoor experience.
Yeah, and I would just add that as staff, we've started meeting in person again, and I can't tell you how nice that has been to actually get to sit next to somebody and see their full face and really have the ability to interact. So I think it'd be a great idea, and we can make it as safe or as comfortable as everybody wants it to be.
Dan?
I really missed interrupting you all without Paige's permission, so I'd really like to meet in person again. But I will be gone out of town for July's meeting, and I could log in if it's online, but I'm going to be far away, so I won't be there if it's in person.
Yeah, and you can call me to interrupt anytime.
Oh.
So Dan, I'm not sure how we're going to do that, Jeff. I don't know how efficient that is, but I think this new world we're living in, there's definitely some efficiencies in having options. But Jeff,
no,
yeah, you already said that. I'm fine with that.
A couple of months ago, we were told that once we start meeting in person, the virtual part has to go away.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, the board passed a motion in accepting that emergency statement. I think it was in February.
Yeah, I was going to say February or March, Jeff. I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll move in that direction. Again, if somebody feels uncomfortable with this, please let us know. The other thing I just mentioned is recreation facilities are back open with no guidelines at this point in time. Masks are recommended if people have not been vaccinated, but we do not ask whether they have been or haven't. Starting to see our numbers bump up, which is great. And Sunset Pool is just going crazy right now with no guidelines. I would say we're easily back over 500 people a day. So that's been really nice to see again. So that's all I had.
Hey Jeff, can I ask a question real quickly? Are the activity pools not opening? I was walking by Roosevelt this morning and it wasn't full.
They are not opening because that was part of budget cuts. And so we will not open either one of them this year. Just a reminder, we had a little over $1.1 million in cuts, and trying to keep the facilities that can serve the broadest parts of our community open. So we had decided to keep those closed this year.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Any other items from staff? David, Steve, Dan? Yep. Go ahead, Dan.
With COVID winding down, we are winding up, obviously, as Jeff has just said. So we are anticipating stepping up the master plan for Button Rock Preserve. And I'd love to get some feedback from the Parks Board. We anticipate probably one more public meeting in October. And we would like maybe either in October or November, do a joint board with a presentation of the master plan recommendations with the Parks Board and the Sustainable Advisory Board. Their typical meetings are, I believe it's Wednesdays at like 3 o'clock. We felt it would be very positive to have a similar presentation to where we could address issues, and the Parks Board could hear from the Sustainability Board, and likewise they could hear some of your concerns and comments. We felt that that would be very beneficial. We would then take everyone's comments to the Water Board and then go through the process of taking this to council for probably a study session and then adoption. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about maybe in October or November joint presentation with the Sustainability Advisory Board.
Could we invite them to our meeting? I think I'd have a hard time with a 3 p.m. meeting.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm asking. You know, we certainly could do that. We'll reach out to them too for feedback. But if I know that the vast majority are not available midday, mid-afternoon, then we could ask them to maybe come to our board meetings.
What do others think? I mean, I'm definitely up for, you know, having a joint presentation, but I wouldn't be able to make it at 3.
I'm in the same boat. Yeah.
So that's 3, at least 3. Dan, you don't count. You're never working. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
Any other comments about that? Okay. Sue?
Just to clarify, so you're saying there's no more public meetings. This will be when they come and recommend?
What we're doing is anticipating one more public meeting to present a draft plan to the public and to solicit one last time feedback from the public before we draft a final draft that we will present to the advisory boards and city council. We've done, I believe, 3 public meetings already and 4 citizen surveys. So we believe that we're in a good position to wrap up the public process.
So this meeting you're talking about with the 2 boards would be that final also public meeting, yes?
You know, again, all these meetings will be open to the public. So this one will be targeted specifically as a presentation to you and the Sustainability Advisory Board.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Any other items from staff? Okay. Any items from the board? Dan?
I have a list. I'll try to put them together. So first, for Dave Bell, we've been going to Lake McIntosh a lot because it's close to the house. The boating is awesome. There's a gazillion people there. It's great. I'm moved over to that side of the equation. It's great. However, the last 2 Saturday nights, there's a little old lady who for years has swum across the lake, and she's still doing it. And there are now kids who swim all the time in the lake. You mentioned a month and 2 months ago that we were going to have more patrols or a boat, or that hasn't yet started. There are no signs that say no swimming. I'm not going to say a word to anybody, but there is swimming there. It's a problem waiting to happen.
So Dan, I appreciate that. And that I think the public safety side, I know there's been a lot of impacts to neighbors. There's been challenges to wildlife. I think we've been trying to address those I'll just lay out a litany of things we've been able to do. This year, we were able to get the wildlife closures up much sooner to help protect that western shore. We have increased trash pickup from Monday through Friday. We now have a weekend group doing it. We're actually going to be installing some new trash cans out there. We have signs.
That's good. So my next note was,
Yep, the
on
trash
Sunday
has been
evening, when you walk by, the trash there's a nice
it's
pile
everywhere.
next to
And
every
they pick it
can.
up. They pick it up Sunday afternoon. I'm not sure.
It's just amazing.
Yep. So we're working on that as well.
Okay, good.
We have requests in for additional budget requests for the boat and additional seasonals next year. Dale Rademacher has said if I want to try cutting the line and say this is important enough, we'd like to do that this year, he would support that. So that really was probably the boat and additional rangers was a 2022. We put it in the budget. I do have 2 additional rangers that are out there, but you got to remember, Dan, those are the same 2 rangers that are covering kids jumping off Dickens. They're covering all the other parks. They're covering the camps along the creek. So they do get out there, and I'm even having my Button Rock seasonal that goes up to Button Rock every day, stop in there on his way up and down, just so we have that additional piece. As far as signs, the city's in the middle of branding changeover. So this has been a much more complicated piece than it typically would be, but I think we have the signs that will be in English and in Spanish. They'll have the new standards. PD's been working on it, our branding pieces. So I think we're really close. It's a Kathy piece, and Steve might have a little bit more information, but I have seen the mock layouts. So those signs will go up and they will have the no swimming in it. And they will have the people have to have a personal flotation device on it. We don't have that in our rules and regs, but our rules and regs allow us to force a sign that has been put up with Dale's recommendation or signature. So we will be able to enforce that once those signs go up as well. So we definitely have work to do out there, Dan. And one of the pieces that I think Dan Wolfer probably saw today too is that, you know, that 25 boats, like I said, it's just unenforceable.
No, totally agree. I agree.
So I think, you know, if we can try addressing those other things by having extra patrols, signs, we're getting there, but we're not there yet, Dan.
No, and I don't mean to complain. I'm
I know you're not.
letting
You're
you
doing
know what's on the ground, what's the feedback. It's popular.
I appreciate
awesome.
that. Yep, I appreciate that because you know, we try getting out there, but having people that use it and can give me that feedback from a different perspective always helps. So
okay.
And Dan, I would say, do not hesitate to call either David or myself, or even Steve for that matter.
Yep.
Doesn't have to wait for a board meeting in order to do that if you see things that seem to be out of place or need some help.
And
Well,
I'll just ask Dan.
At some point, it's policy. At some point, the city council gets to decide what is okay or not okay. Or, you know, I mean, it's not for me or us, this board, to decide. I'm just letting you guys know what I see, and maybe that has to go up the chain. I don't know.
So, and again, I think that's what we're trying to do is we recognize that some of those changes we were able to put in for the budget, they need to happen sooner than later. So Dale, I do think I do have my chains support on that. It has to fit in the bigger piece, but hearing it from this group helps a lot, Dan.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're doing the garbage because it's amazing. I mean, it's cute little neat stacks of boxes and cans and all right next to the garbage can. There's just a lot of folks visiting. It's really
and I
amazing.
looked at that too. And Dan, this is another piece that probably come on this conversation that Timber just found out about tonight. As I look at that trash there, because of the type of use and date, a lot of that is cans and bottles and stuff. And I'm asking to have recyclables.
Yep, that would be good
So,
for a town like us where it's so
Right.
easy.
Yep, I saw way too much stuff that could be in a recyclable container sitting out on the ground and overflowing.
True, cool. Okay, can I go on, Paige?
How long is your list?
I got 2 more items.
All right.
So the
go
next
ahead.
one is for Jeff. I've gotten a couple of feedback things at Sunset Pool. It's very popular, as you already mentioned. Folks, I think, are used to the 1-hour swim thing. Now lap swimming, people go for as long as they please. There is a backup. People don't want to do any more than 2 per lane. And it looks as though you have to wait, you know, and folks are swimming for an hour and a half plus. Is there any policy or is that fine? Do we need a sign? In order to get more usage, Should we be limiting it to an hour or not? I don't know if this is a policy you guys have. Just again, pointing out.
We could look into that. It's news to me that we're limiting things to 2 per lane. You know, historically, we haven't done that, but.
No, it's not it's just a de facto limit. Go
Yeah.
by and look.
Okay, I will do that.
People split lanes, but nobody circle swims unless you're in a team, Masters or Kara, or it just doesn't happen.
Okay.
In my
Yep,
experience. Sue, do you have any experience there? Do
I was
people
gonna
circle
say,
swim?
what time of day are you even talking about? Because,
Oh, this is the late morning, 10, 11 a.m.
okay. I mean, I'm not seeing a problem. I think people are sort of in this mode, oh, I get 1 hour. So I'm actually seeing people waiting like, oh, I can't get in. I personally have never felt like I had to wait to get in. I mean, I think people got in that mode the last year that I get an hour and I have to wait for someone to get out. But I don't know how to spread that, make that clear. I've not seen it as a problem myself. I've not seen
I
people.
just got feedback today.
Right.
So that's why it's on my mind.
Sure, there's
Right.
probably a couple people. So somewhere, I don't know what people would read to sort of get that information in their head. I don't know where they would go to get that information, but they should be asking a lifeguard, and the lifeguards and the front desk people should know the answer. So I would say that's probably the best place to make sure they're very informed. There's
Again,
probably
just
some
pointing something out, Jeff. Just
Yep.
letting you know.
I will get with staff and look into it.
Okay.
I have a recommendation on that same topic, if that's okay. I feel like when I used to swim in the rec center, which I haven't in a long time, especially when it was at the regular rec center, when there was only maybe 2 lanes available certain times, when they had the other part for aqua activities.
Yeah.
There were people that would not be willing to do anything other than splitting. And at some point I felt like a sign went up that said something like, if there are people waiting, you need to circle swim. And I've definitely seen that in the Boulder rec centers. And so
Yes.
I would encourage little A-frame signs that actually give the etiquette. If we're really that popular, it makes it so much easier to not be a jerk when you're like, this is how it's supposed to be. Because a lot of people just don't know how to circle swim. And if you have the sign that shows what it is, I think that works really well.
Okay, good comment. I will get on that. Thanks, both of you.
And the last issue is tennis. Somebody again asked me, especially with these hot days, remind me again when the tennis shelter at Quail. It's a budget item, and I think you guys said maybe next year. I want to be able to tell people when they ask me.
That is Steve's. I'll let Steve jump in on that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I do not have the current funding. It's not going to be next year.
Okay, I'll say
yeah, no, it's
TBD. All right.
It's something that just
That same woman, Patsy, who came to our meeting last October
know
and asked
Patsy,
about
yes.
backboards.
Yep.
She asked me again, is that get in or what happened there?
Unless David changes my priorities, I have 3 priorities right now, and that's not one of them.
Okay. And if there's a net that's a problem, is there a phone or complaint line? If a light goes out or remind me, where do I go?
So Jeff, do you have one for your guys? Because I do. We have the call center.
Call center.
Call center.
I would
Thank
say
you.
the call center.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Paige. I'm done.
And do you want that number for the call center?
Sure.
So that one is going to be the 303-651-8416.
Thanks.
Just to confirm, what call center is that? Sorry.
So that goes to Public Works Natural Resources. You have a great group over there that's pretty good at getting information to Timber and his group, or Dan and his group. They know our system pretty well. So it's one that you probably get the least amount of let me check. So if you come over there for things that kind of follow that Public Works Natural Resources, it'll get to us pretty quickly that way.
So this could be anything, a street light out, a trail sign down. I mean, that's great to know.
Potholes, all that sort of stuff. Yes, they'll take it all. Trash doesn't get picked up.
Can you give the number one more time? 651 something?
Yeah, 651-8416. 8416.
Is that also, I know, David, we talked about graffiti at one point. Is that the kind of place where I would just contact them for those kind of situations too?
And I'm sorry.
I said if there was like graffiti at a park, is that the kind of
Yeah,
thing?
perfect. That's, yep, exactly.
Okay.
They will actually put that service request right in and go right to my guys pretty much automatically.
Dan Wolfert?
Yeah, I apologize, but I want to just jump right in and mention that we are moving into mosquito season, and we will be starting our mosquito control program next Sunday. So just a reminder of, the 4Ds, and I'm certain you've all heard me spout about it before, about dusk to dawn, what to wear when you're outside during those times. Long sleeves, light colored, loose clothing. Make certain that, standing water in your yard is being removed, and then defend, which, is the use of a repellent. But, we're jumping right out of COVID and back into West Nile. So just as a quick reminder, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. There was a pretty significant tick season in there too, so lots of fun.
Always.
Anything else from the board?
I have a
Sue?
question. In the minutes, I know you talked about a possible rec center and kind of how to get going at the last meeting. And it said that Jeff was going to go to the next city council meeting with that. Did that happen, or?
No, what we talked about is that we are going to be working on a process to get feedback from the public on what the facility should be. And then it would go to back to you as the board, and then ultimately to city council.
So are you creating a survey of some sort, or what's the plan?
We will be. This last month has been all about getting reopened, so I haven't done anything with it yet.
No, but that's sort of the idea, is like a survey open.
Survey and public meetings also.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or other items?
Paige, do you know if there's a chat mode I can drop this contact information in? And it's a pretty good link here. There's not.
We don't have chat, I don't think. So
Okay. So, yep, I'll just reiterate then. So
maybe Aurora or Nikki could send it out.
Okay.
I have it, David, and it's in the notes of the meeting.
Okay.
So it'll go out to everybody.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
I had one last item, which was just that I love all the new trees that were planted in Willow Farm Park. I'm not sure who's responsible for that, but I would love to thank them because they look great.
Thank you.
That's awesome that you say that, Paige. I have not been down there, but that was my first project with the city. And so those trees are some of the first that I located the plantings of. And now to see them mature like that over 23 years later, it's interesting to see some die. And
there's a bunch of new ones now.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I love that park. Okay. Anything else? If not, I think we're ready to go to adjournment. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
And
I move we adjourn.
need a second.
I'll second.
Great, thanks. All those in favor? Awesome. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Stay cool
Thank you.
out there.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.